Okay. All right. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Excited to dive in here about short and light periods and what they mean for your fertility. Are they a red flag? Let's get to it. This is a super common question that we get asked on social media, in our programs, that we help people really start to clarify in their journey in our cohorts. And so we're going to just talk a little bit, give you the information that you need to really take that a step further. And in fact, this was inspired by a screen recording that Carrie sent me from a very popular fertility support page group on Facebook, and the insane flat out wrong answers that people were getting there about their short periods. So yeah, and I know this is super common for a lot of you, that you have felt that like you've asked your doctor and they just say it's normal. So we're gonna talk about it. This is us. We're all here. Kaylee, Carrie. You can read more about us on our website, who we help, and our background and training. But we want to jump right in. So definitely yourfertilityyourfuture.com. If you haven't checked that out, you can read all about us. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, if you have questions as we go, just put them in the chat box. Kaylee will be moderating that there. And then we'll also try to have time at the end for Q&A. All right, let's live Q&A. We also have a lot of your questions that you did submit on your registration forms that we're going to address through the material today. All right. So this is what we're going to be covering today. Period red flags, signs and symptoms of low estrogen, and why Clomid isn't the go-to here. Signs and symptoms of low progesterone, other factors to consider when thinking about looking to your period to get answers about your fertility needs, and how to clarify what your fertility needs from you. Clarify. If you just saw us talking on Instagram, you understand, you're kind of getting into what it means to clarify, why it's so powerful. Carrie and I just went on Instagram Live and gave a real example of a client who just started a program with us, and how powerful this very first step is for her specifically. It's so powerful. I mean, we do this for every single person we work with in any capacity. But really, what does that mean? So check that out after the webinar if you haven't. And really remembering that red flags and hormone imbalances, although they're very important to understand and clarify, they're not root causes. Okay. So we still have to understand why. Why do we have a light period? Why do we have, on the other side, a heavy period? Why do we have spotting, right? These are always downstream symptoms telling us what root causes, clarifying what root causes to address. All right. So yes, this is important discussion, but we always want to understand that it's due to something else, which we will talk about. And conventional medicine really brushes this off as normal. This is that major kind of problem we saw in that forum that I was talking about, where, and clients we work with one-on-one, well, my doctor said it's normal to have a 2-day period. We get women saying like, oh, well, my OB told me, lucky you. I wish all my clients had a short light period. No. So yeah, it's a problem. All right. This is related to unexplained infertility, miscarriage, poor IUI, IVF response. And really understanding this and clarifying this can put you back in control of your journey. So let's dive into low estrogen here as number one. Okay. So estrogen is going to be a major, major player, and the very first hormone we have to talk about when we're talking about short and light periods. So this is potential low estrogen can show as symptoms like a bleed under 3 days, lack of cervical mucus before ovulation, vaginal dryness. We also see this in presenting in low body weights, low body fat percent, and this over exercising, under eating picture. Now, this is very subjective. All right. So this is a piece that we really, really work on individually with people in our cohorts, because you may feel like you're not over exercising or under eating. And that's, it's just, you have to get an objective point of view of that, right? You actually have to see that on a tracking your intake, understanding what your needs are, and really identifying if that is a true observation or not. We see that most oftentimes women we work with are accidentally or unknowingly under eating. All right. And so when we see these things paired with the whole picture, right? It's definitely a red flag for fertility. I know Sarah. Oh yeah, just we're always thinking about our clients. Sarah, I thought of her specifically with this question. She came to us with 3 miscarriages. We sifted through all of her normal labs that she had from her doctor's appointments, and noticed a pattern of very thin endometrial lining from the beginning. All right, every single time she went in for to have a DNC with her losses, she had a very low estrogen picture, bleed under 3 days, thin endometrial lining in her paperwork. She was just told to keep trying, come back for another DNC. Unfortunately, that's gonna kind of worsen the uterine lining picture, something called Asherman syndrome. Anyway, all this to say, whenever we really understood through her normal labs that were just buried in all of her records, clarified her story, paired it with her symptoms. She's really trying to be healthy, lose weight. She really wanted to have this really, healthy picture for her fertility. We kind of had to do some things that she didn't really think she would be appropriate for her in terms of eating more, getting that estrogen up. She just had her second baby in the spring after working on this. So I just love thinking about Sarah. She always sends me pictures of her babies. So this can be a sign of that low estrogen or thin endometrium picture. Is it always? No. This is why. This isn't a fear mongering. If you have X, Y, and Z, then you have this issue. No, that is not how we work here. Okay. But this can be an indication of low estrogen, which is going to impact your entire cycle. And we'll talk more about that later. Why it's so important to start with estrogen, even though progesterone and 2-week weight, they get a ton of focus and a lot of our emotional energy. If your estrogen is not supported, well, then you're not going to be making waves in that progesterone luteal phase 2-week weight picture. Other contributors to this low estrogen picture, and again, a bleed under 3 days is always a red flag that we want to be thinking about with low estrogen. We're thinking about oversuppression from long-term birth control use. And we're always thinking about root causes like the TAG or tag axis, which the next page is going to show you a great visual on that. This is where we begin the upstream issues causing low hormones downstream. Other ways that you might start to clarify this, clues that you can bring in instead of just being told, yeah, well, that's normal and not to worry about it. What is your follicular phase looking like? Do we have, and that's the first part of your cycle before ovulation. Is that a shorter length? Is that extended? Is your estrogen taking a long time to build up and eventually have to be high enough to trigger ovulation? This is where tracking in the, I don't want to say right way, because there's always more than one way to do things, but in a,
I think complete.
yeah, complete in a way that feels good, like honors you, doesn't stress you out. Comfort, like, yes, complete way. I love that, Carrie. Thank you. Complete way to monitor those phases. See, actually, interesting. Yeah, I don't think that phase is really looking like it should. Poor cervical mucus, a uterine lining under 7 mm's on ultrasound at the time of ovulation, and then next, kind of bringing in this Clomid picture to this, because I know that's exactly where people's minds go, because this is where we're told by clinics, right? Like, well, if you do have low estrogen and you are actually able to kind of maybe get some support for that, it's going to be Clomid that's recommended, right, Carrie? I mean, that's typically like the thing to go to. So what's wrong with that? Why wouldn't Clomid be helpful for our low estrogen ladies?
Yeah, so to understand what Clomid and letrozole, so if you haven't heard of them, they are medications that we use to induce ovulation. Um, Not always appropriate when you're already ovulating. Just want to throw that out there. Um, but what I want you to understand, if you do use them, it's not, we're not against them. We want the right people to be using them and the wrong people to get other support. So to understand if it's right for you or not, you need to kind of understand what they do. So Clomid, for example, blocks estrogen receptors, and what that really means is it negates the effect of estrogen on your body. And letrozole falsely lowers estrogen production. It tricks your body into thinking, hey, we don't have any estrogen and we need to ovulate soon, so we better start making some estrogen. So you actually end up making a lot of estrogens in response to letrozole. Um, that can be a good thing, but that can also backfire. Part of how, for example, letrozole works is in that period where it's faking your body out that you're not making estrogen, or when Clomid is blocking that estrogen receptor, you can feel like what you might feel like in menopause. You might have hot flashes. You might have sleep disturbances, night sweats, no cervical mucus. Your lining might not be getting the attention it needs. And so, in that, if you already have low estrogen, we might be pushing that deficiency further. So, that could mean, like I said, less cervical mucus, thinner lining, more spotting. That's not really a good thing when we're about to ovulate and hopefully implant. So estrogen thickens the uterine lining. A lot of people think it's progesterone. It's actually estrogen, and it triggers cervical mucus, which is essential for conception. So without that, if we're not having that lining and we're not having that cervical mucus, that embryo might not be able to implant if you even make it an embryo. It can also affect egg quality. I mean, there's a reason that our sex hormones are called our sex hormones. They play a role in follicle development and egg quality. So if you don't have that proper estrogen support, it's not going to be probably an ideal cycle for you. So this is what on our end, what we see is a lot of these people who are doing IUI with medicated IUIs. It's not working, but they're just doing it over and over and over again. It's because it's not really the right protocol for you in the clinic. And there's probably some root cause support that we can be doing on our end to kind of get you over that hump. So just to tie that up in a bow for you, if you are using these meds and you have shorter, lighter periods, no egg white cervical mucus or less egg white cervical mucus, vaginal dryness, mood changes. Ugh, I took letrozole myself and I
Mm.
have very high estrogen, and it was the mood. I like 10 out of 10, don't recommend it. It was
We've heard
terrible.
that a lot from people, right, Carrie? Like they've felt the worst they've ever felt emotionally when they were doing clomid.
I was like, what's even the point of trying to conceive? Like, I'm just done. I was like, done, done. I just was it was so low. And then thin lining. So those are the things to look for. If you're taking one of those and you're noticing any one of those things, it might not be the right thing for you. And we might actually need to bring in estrogen support. We might need to bring in like hormone replacement and be doing like estradiol patches or something. You might need more estrogen, not less. So I just wanted to kind of explain that for you guys.
And bringing in support through multiple avenues, right? Very rarely are we going to say, like, okay, well, we see this imbalance. Here's the one thing to do. It's always going to be a combination of lifestyle, nutrition, supplement, potential medication, dependent on your root causes that we're clarifying, right? So that always depends. This is also why you keep chasing the next thing just because, well, okay, that's the next thing on the list. Well, why are they doing that for you? What's your gut look like? What's your thyroid look like? What's your adrenals look like? Right. And so when we're talking about those, oftentimes people don't, and I get it, like it's hard to kind of think about that on your own and figure that out. That's exactly why we do that in the clarify phase, because even gut, I mean, let's talk about what Kaylee is our gut expert. What about gut is a big deal with estrogen? And do you have to feel gut symptoms to have this contribution to this estrogen picture?
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great question and something to definitely think about when you're thinking about estrogen in your story, because you do not need to have gut symptoms to have issues with your gut impacting your estrogen levels. So, three main ways the gut impacts estrogen in the body. One, absorption of your nutrients, things that you're eating. If you cannot absorb the precursors to produce estrogen, you can't produce enough estrogen. So, you need all your B vitamins, you need zinc, you need cholesterol, you need saturated fats. If you have issues with absorption, your gut is damaged and can't absorb them properly, well, we don't have the ingredients that we need to bake that cake to have enough estrogen. Number two, inflammation. So low-grade gut inflammation plays a big role in estrogen signaling and production in the body. So if you have, leaky gut, intestinal permeability, if you think you have food sensitivities, if you think you have dysbiosis or maybe a parasite, candida, or yeast overgrowth, this can actually produce a lot of something called inflammatory cytokines. They are signaling molecules of inflammation. And so that can actually impair the communication from the brain to your ovaries, so you don't produce enough estrogen, and impact follicular development. So you, again, don't produce enough estrogen. So super big connections that we have to kind of tie the gut in here. And then finally, the estrobolome, a very kind of funny name, but it just represents a group of specific bacteria in the gut. This is a Goldilocks kind of a situation here. You want to have the right estrobolome producing the right amount of this enzyme that is going to either help you excrete your estrogen or reabsorb estrogen. So we want you to reabsorb a little bit more if you're a low estrogen picture. And if you think you have estrogen dominance, we want you to excrete more estrogen by way of your stools. So if you are not pooping daily and estrogen is a question mark in your head, got to get you pooping daily. Got to get you digesting all of those precursors here, and got to address any inflammation that is coming from the gut. So addressing the G part of the tag axis, super, super important when we're thinking about downstream sex hormone imbalances.
And this is a complex picture, but really to show that it is a complex system. This isn't just, okay, like your doctor thinks, all right, brain to ovaries, great. If it doesn't work, we give medication. There's so much influence, which gives us so much possibility and opportunity. All right. This is the power of understanding a root cause approach to your fertility. Is it's not all or nothing. It's not, well, okay, if this isn't working, then we checked off all the boxes, the limited boxes there are, and now it's med time. Of course, that's a fine and legitimate approach if that is for you. Again, everyone's going to make their own decisions. What we are here to explore, what most people want, is a more full picture, whole body approach. And this is that HPA TGIG, a very big mouthful, but basically this is that tag axis, gut, immune, stress, thyroid. Everything is telling our body that it's either a safe place to get pregnant or not. I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. When we have little fires happening in all of these systems, your body, your reproductive system is going to accept and receive a message of, oh, heck no, there's too much going on here. All right. We cannot, are you crazy? Like, this is not going to happen. When we begin to understand, first clarify what system needs supported, and two, rebuild, that's when we unlock, right? So that is how we address this outside of this standard clinical approach. In fact, there's a really great testimony in our library from Rachel. I'm just thinking of it now. I don't remember her specifics, but multiple losses, I believe one IVF, or maybe she was told IVF but didn't do it. This was a while ago. And she's said, like she says right there in her testimony, like, the clinic told me, we don't care about anything that's going on outside of your uterus. I mean, that's just how they work, So if that's the approach that you want, that's fine. But if you really want to understand, well, what does low estrogen, do I have low estrogen? Do I have, what are my symptoms telling me? What is my late short period telling me? Well, then that's when you need a different approach. All right. So that's the difference. It really sums it up. When I heard that from her, I was, so many years ago, I was just flabbergasted. I was like, oh, wow. They actually they just say that. That's okay. All right. So, it's about getting those answers. In the case of low estrogen, we want to be thinking about things like suboptimal or incomplete thyroid labs, specifically thyroid, metabolic labs, nervous system dysfunction, gut absorption, all those things that Kaylee was talking about. And I don't want to take time doing it here. Carrie, we were going to talk about one of your appointments you had, I think 2 days ago now. We just did a whole Instagram live on this. So I'm just going to, you guys, let's go on my Instagram. It's right there. I don't know, 10 minutes we were on for something. Just do yourself a favor and head there next. Just insane. The point is, IUI and IVF can't save a body that's running on fumes. Okay. So if we have low hormones, and starting with low estrogen, because remember, if you have low estrogen, you're going to have low progesterone. We can't, that can't just be the one thing that comes in and corrects everything. It's just not going to work. We see it over and over again. Somebody had a great question. Bridget S. She had a question about estrogen dominance in her form. This is a whole nother topic, but one that we also help people to clarify. I'm just going to say this. A part of that is you can have estrogen dominance, but still have low estrogen, which is very confusing. Is
Yeah.
this you, Carrie?
I at certain parts of my cycle. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And so this is very confusing. And why, why these symptoms are brushed off by many practitioners is because they don't have the nuance to get in there. They don't have the nuance to say, like, oh, actually, you're a very low estrogen person, but you actually have estrogen dominance from that estrobolome connection and from these other root causes. So let's actually do it from that approach, right? That's going to dictate your supplements that you're on, your food that you want to be enjoying. I see so many times people go on supplements like DIM, for example, for estrogen dominant symptoms.
I was going to ask you to please explain the
Stop going on DIM. Stop going on DIM if you don't know this picture yet, if you don't have it clarified. DIM is a super popular supplement in the fertility space. We see it all the time on these Facebook forums, and we're like, if you have low estrogen and you take DIM to help with, quote, like estrogen metabolism, estrogen detoxification, DIM is going to tank your estrogen levels even further. All right. So it's not the one for you. You got to understand what you're actually addressing. If you don't have it clarified, then you're going to be doing more harm than good. Do they tend to decrease with age? Yes, they do, Krista. All hormones, right? So, but not just age, stress, gut health, oxidative stress, inflammation, right? This isn't just an age. Nothing infertility is really an age thing. I know that's a whole other thing we can get into. But stress is a big one we see, and not fueling enough, which I'm going to get there here soon, but let's talk about that in a moment. We're really going to talk about that specifically, that under eating, over exercising picture. Very, very important for this. Can you have low estrogen in Dutch but optimal? Yeah, for sure. We see this all the time. Look at Kaylee here, like, yep.
I couldn't wait for you to answer that.
This is so frustrating. This is a perfect example of normal labs. You have normal labs, and then you do a Dutch, and they're not so normal, okay? Because a normal lab, you're getting a blood draw, one snippet in time, one draw. Hormones are a pulse. If you have normal estrogen in your blood, but you have all these symptoms, I'm going to highly recommend you do a Dutch, just exactly for this reason, because we can see it's very low there, and then we would be completely ignoring this. Yeah, huge. So if we have, again, low estrogen via those symptoms, via those tag access root causes, we're not going to have the rest of the cycle go optimally. Okay. It's like a conveyor belt. If you don't have that great follicular phase, that strong estrogen production, you're eating enough, you're absorbing it, you're putting all this into your sex hormone production, you get great follicle development and a powerful ovulation, you're not going to have good progesterone. All right. So we see these oftentimes go hand in hand. And low progesterone, you could still be ovulating. Most of our clients are ovulating. Would you say that? I would say that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Most of our clients are ovulating. And that's really frustrating, right? So it's like, well, I'm ovulating, but I'm not getting pregnant. There's so many things that go into this. Another really classic example of low progesterone that's brushed off is spotting for 3 or more days before your first day of your period. Luteal phases that are under 12 days. Again, having complete tracking to capture this. You can't just be doing this on a little app on your phone that says, oh, you ovulated. Good. Congrats. No. Okay. 7-day post-ovulation progesterone, in my opinion, is really not the best measure of progesterone. I want to see a more comprehensive understanding of that with proper FAM tracking, with Dutch is gold standard, but looking at your symptoms, looking at your root causes, looking at luteal phase length, all these things. Symptoms can include PMS, anxiety, sleep issues before your period, and be related to these things: chemical miscarriage, that person who's never had a positive, because again, it comes right from that low estrogen picture. All right. Always thinking tag right here. This is just, they're so underappreciated as contributors to altered flow, cycle irregularity, and spotting patterns. It's because, it's root cause. It's root cause identification. And again, depending on what approach you want, you're either just know that if you're going with the standard, you're not going to get that. All right. So your call. Kaylee, what were we talking about? Oh, yeah, this is a big one. I want it. So low progesterone more so via the action that it gives us. What can that be telling us actually about our estrogen? Can you clarify that for us?
Yeah, so when we are thinking, or you might be thinking that you have low progesterone, we want to be seeing the dynamics of that progesterone and your estrogen in the second half of your menstrual cycle, in that luteal phase. Because you could have technically okay, normal, or even optimal levels of progesterone, but too much estrogen. And that is creating a relative deficiency of progesterone where it's not doing the correct physiological actions on your tissue. So a Dutch really helps to clarify that because we want to see what both are doing together to really be able to improve that picture, because you might actually not need all the progesterone support. Maybe your progesterone's okay. You don't need the Vitex. You don't need the sweet potatoes, the vitamin C, whatever it is. But maybe you need more estrogen modulation in the second half of that phase. And that is what is contributing to that spotting, to the shorter luteal phase. It's not truly progesterone, possibly. So that is something that we are always looking for when we're assessing why someone is not getting that correct luteal phase length over 12 days, and why you might be spotting before period. So really important to understand not just your progesterone in the second half of the cycle, where progesterone, we really want that to shine. We want to understand what estrogen is contributing to maybe dimming the light of that progesterone in your body.
I was gonna say too, just to piggyback on you, Kaylee, that when the progesterone is not having the correct action on your body, your tissues, it could also be a short period because you're not building up that lining the way it should, and you're having something that we call progesterone resistance. That could also be part of the whole short period as well, just not just spotting.
And this is why that 7-DPO is not a great marker for us to measure and just confirm, like, well, yeah, progesterone's good in that one value. Because if you have, like Carrie's saying, if you have low estrogen, your cells are not going to be as receptive to progesterone. So you could have a beautiful 7-day post-ovulation progesterone level in your blood, but it doesn't mean that that's actually getting into it's not actually getting into the endometrial lining and acting on those cells. So again, whole picture. If you're only focusing on luteal phase and progesterone, you're missing 50% of the equation and story for you. All right. And this is kind of when we're talking about Dutch tests. We love Dutch tests. It's just such, I mean, anybody trying to conceive for over a year, I highly recommend to get a Dutch test. There's two different versions of it. Well, there's many different versions of it, but the most common that we use is a Dutch cycle mapping, which comes with this value, this graph. You wake up and you pee on a piece of paper throughout one cycle, which is each of these collection circles, and it graphs out your estrogen and progesterone. So how are they playing with each other? Are they in those relative appropriate amounts? Do you have enough? So you can see here, mapping that out and really seeing the value of those throughout a whole cycle is very, very powerful. This is where we catch estrogen dominance, which is what Kaylee was talking about, where maybe you have beautiful progesterone in your blood, but your estrogen is just beating it out in the second half of your cycle. This might be the most common pattern that I see in people who have never had a positive. And when we actually know how to address that and know, again, it's not usually dim, then we get those positives. And it's usually a very faint one. And it's like, oh my gosh, I've never had this before in my life. And then a few more cycles of repleting and building, bam. Right. Another thing we see again in kind of this, and I put this as depletion because those levels that you saw right there really aren't enough to get and stay pregnant, even though they'd be all normal in a blood lab. And this is another example of this very low estrogen picture. So you see here estradiol being very low. Just think of this like a gas gauge. This is empty. Progesterone hardly peaking. I mean, this would be normal. This would be normal again. Testosterone, also very important for our trying to conceive ladies. This is not going to do it. All right. I remember this was from one of my clients who now has 3 babies, and super a runner. So we had to talk about energy expenditure and repletion. And yeah, Kaylee, we are going to get to that in a moment. But yeah, just better testing, test, don't guess. All right. This helps us to really take the guesswork out of it. Melissa, you had a question about Hashimoto's. I don't believe there is a direct correlation with Hashimoto's to short periods. I think there's other happenings there for the short periods. Now, this could be depletions, right? This could be gut absorption, nutrient depletions, which do impact autoimmunity. And that can also be that same vein as short periods, right? So that's my initial thought there. Of course, would want to see your numbers, your values. And love that you're working on thyroid. So really important there. Hashimoto's, remember though, you got to be working on gut too. That's where those antibody production begins. So if you're really only addressing Hashimoto's from the thyroid level, there's multiple roots to many things, but I would say the root to Hashimoto's is gut.
I was going to piggyback and say, if there's gut inflammation here, I always like to give this visualization, and its neighbor as our reproductive organs, your uterus, your ovaries, what happens here isn't just going to stay here. It's going to travel over here. So yes, there could be some inflammation that is affecting either, how your body is signaling to be growing that lining and you're getting shorter periods, despite them being regular. Or it's, just some other inner workings of like how Hashimoto's and your immune system is along the way. But yeah, I think there's probably some gut stuff going on.
And this is where Rachel from before, when she was told, we don't care about anything that's happening outside of your uterus, that's a perfect example. Because if you're putting those blinders on, you're like, okay, yep, uterus, let's look here. But we have all this inflammation coming from the gut and impacting. You got it. So really important. And other factors that we did want to address. So you guys had a lot of questions on your forms about this. So we wanted to give a little bit of highlight to other symptoms. Brown spotting after your period. So this can be oxidized old blood, is technically why it's brown. However, in functional fertility, we rarely want to stop there. We want to think about other indications like low-grade inflammation in the uterus, poor uterine tone, poor circulation, pelvic trauma, incomplete progesterone, again, in the luteal phase, causing a little bit of that inadequate luteal phase health, right? So again, cycle mapping would be huge, but it's just so important to clarify what else is going on. Lori Q had a question. Could light and brown / very dark red periods lead to thin uterine lining or silent endometriosis? And I don't know if she's on here, but when I see a question like this, I kind of want to reframe it a little bit. I want to think about what is leading to the light and brown / very dark red periods, right? Not like, can those lead to silent endometriosis? So I would kind of reframe that a little bit and address it like that for you, which is a lot of what we've learned about here. But another question, again, we always get is hormone imbalances. And I put imbalances in quote, not to minimize that as a problem, but to really remember that it's very broad. All right. Imbalances in what, we really have to figure out those questions and clarify those questions that we were talking about before, right? Is this actually low progesterone, or is this estrogen dominance like Haley was talking about? Why aren't hormones robust enough to fully mature follicle, have that great strong ovulation, shed the endometrial lining completely? These are not a root cause. Okay. So I don't want you chasing hormone imbalances or symptoms, right? We're bringing it back to that root cause patterns. Again, I've named a lot of them, but those are things that we do need to clarify. The third, infections or cervical irritation. This is more likely common in women with new sexual partners, history of BV, yeast, or STIs. We also see this spotting after intercourse or mid-cycle. Could be an indication of some other infection going on. This is where we look at tests like vaginal microbiome sequencing tests. And I know Carrie has been really reaching out and talking to a lot of different testing companies about this, getting the best one for you guys to refer to, and how we know how to actually support you and what those find. But this is something we very commonly recommend for people too that might have symptoms such as this. Anything else to add there, Carrie or Kaylee, before I keep going on through these? And Okay.
I don't think so. I mean, there's also, you can also be working with your clinic to be getting a biopsy just to check that out. But do know that if you are experiencing spotting at any point in your cycle, especially if it's for more than a couple of days, it could be, taking away a little bit from your lining. So for example, if you're spotting for, 3 days after your period, your lining's not really getting that chance to like fully build up because it's still a little bit is still getting sloughed off. So that might not be the perfect cycle to try and conceive, but we want to get to the bottom of why that's even happening. So that could be also fueling that thinner lining picture.
Yeah, huge. Next one, talking about endometriosis or adenomyosis. So these are especially important to understand signs and symptoms. Painful cramping, painful ovulation is kind of the classic, but doesn't always have to accompany that. I'm never continue. What am I trying to say? I'm always shocked about whenever we start working with women and they have painful cramps. They have painful cycles, but it's just been so normalized since they've been young that they're like, yeah, well, this is just normal. This is my normal. It's like, well, yeah, you've been told that. And unfortunately, we need to understand that picture better, right? But they've just kind of been ignoring it.
Yeah, last cohort we had one or two that said that the first day they would either one would pass out from pain and the other would vomit from pain.
Yeah. And they've been told that that's the part of being a woman, right?
Well, my mom and sisters are like that, so
yeah. So it's not your fault. This is just I was talking to my 10-year-old niece about this. She was having her hormone talks at school, and one of her friends asked about like, well, do periods hurt? Like, are they painful? And she said that her teacher said, yep, that's just part of it. Like, they can be painful.
Really? Give your teacher my number.
Right. So it's just, again, it's not your fault. I mean, we've been kind of just told this since we're young. Another very commonly overlooked symptom of endo or adeno is GI symptoms, gut. This is where Kaylee just really rocks it in understanding, how to identify. In fact, we've helped people to get a proper diagnosis of endometriosis because of their gut picture. So very, very important. Spotting both before and after bleeding, infertility and early loss, and history of surgical interventions or pelvic trauma. Again, we're looking at all this. What is your story? What is your story and how is it leading to where we are today? And the last one to finish up, because I know we're running short on time here, are polyps and fibroids. So we often see these with mid-cycle spotting, irregular cycle length, and heavier than usual flow. This is where we would want to work with you and help you feel comfortable going into a clinic and getting the testing you need. Maybe that's a transvaginal ultrasound. Maybe that's an endometrial biopsy. Going into a clinic and knowing how to ask for these things to get answers without just going in and then telling you, well, you need IVF. Well, maybe down the road if I'm ready for that, but I'm not ready for that right now. I would like to get some answers first, right? All right. So what can you do to support your fertility when you have short and light periods? This was a question that somebody submitted. So, right, hopefully you may have already gathered some insight and clarity on your own journey to this. This was from Kristen B. Submitted this. But number one, not eating enough. Number two, not absorbing enough. Tag axis is going to equal suboptimal fertility hormones. All right. This is where we see success. This is where this is not touched on by a standard approach. This is ignored. Personally, all three of us have achieved success in varying types of fertility struggles on our own journey, including multiple losses, including chemicals, including a really hardcore picture of subfertility. And so this is what we see keeping women stuck is they're going to do all the other things. They're going to take all the random supplements that might be, not for them. They're going to potentially go to Clomid as the next step. They're going to just be told it's normal and keep trying and then told IVF is their only option. This is what keeps them stuck and burn out. And this is where we always begin. This is clarify. This is part of that repletion picture. Somebody asked that, how do you, I think Kaylee, how do you replete? So this is where we have to begin to clarify. And so Um, I wanted to play this short video. Wait, hold on. Wait, pause, Jessica. Hold on. I gotta switch. Okay. Now see if it works.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica, and I was in Olivia's April cohort. To tell you a little bit about my story, I've had irregular cycles all my life and thought nothing of it. When I got married, I went on the birth control pill for a few years and then stopped when we decided to try. And then after that, my body just stopped cycling altogether. I was told my hormone levels were quote unquote normal and was diagnosed with PCOS after an ultrasound, and then was recommended an ovulation inducing drug. But I felt like if I wasn't cycling, how could my hormones be fine? So I found a functional practitioner and worked on some vitamin deficiencies and eating healthier. But I wasn't seeing the changes that I wanted, and I ended up having a chemical pregnancy in February of this year. And from there, I really wanted to get the ball rolling and work on some things, and discovered Olivia on Instagram and decided to reach out to her. And she told me that they had a cohort coming up and thought I would be a great candidate for that. And I decided to spend money on myself to find a root cause. I learned so much from the weekly modules. Some of it I had heard before, but had not been explained to me as plainly, like what the foundations are, how important they are, and how so many systems are connected. Having the community and the weekly calls was so helpful to see each other and people going through similar things and to see what questions they were asking that I could learn from. Then once we got to the one-on-one portion, I got a chance to hear direct feedback on my story, what I'd been doing well to that point, what I needed to work on, and then I really took that and just ran with that. And then after that, saw some great changes. And shortly after that, figured out that I had ovulated through my fam charting. So that was really exciting. I'd been trying to track that kind of thing for the last 9 months of my 2-year journey and had not seen any sort of ovulation or peak on my tracking. And since then, have just felt so supported through the 2-week wait. Olivia, Carrie, and Kaylee, they really just care about your results. I could feel they were happy for me and proud of my progress and wanted me to keep sending updates on my charts and everything just to see how things were progressing. Before this cohort, I had been put on the right path in some ways, but in some ways had not. There's a lot of information out there, and to be able to do this cohort, to get a bio-individualized plan, to know that I'm implementing things that are right for me and my body and what my body is saying, I just feel is really powerful. And the fact that you get access to a great community, access to professionals, and sharing of some really important information in a way that I can understand it. Now I've successfully tracked ovulation and am waiting to take a pregnancy test. It may be my month, it may be not. But if it's not, I know I'm doing the right things for my body to set me up for the next cycle.
I get back. Hold on. Okay, so while we're honoring Jessica's privacy, we're not going to tell you where she's at right now, but it's just a really cool. Soon, maybe we'll be able to share some more information about her specific journey here. She was actually paired with Kaylee, Carrie, in her one-on-one part of the cohort. And yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I just would love for you to talk to Carrie about working with Jessica is what was the number one thing that she did to finally ovulate on her own and have this incredibly beautiful chart right here that we see, this huge progesterone surge? What did she really hone in on, focus on? Maybe the one thing that she committed to fully.
She just ate more. The biggest thing that we did together was eating more, eating consistently. She was so worried about, like, well, what if, I get pulled into a meeting and I have to skip my snack? And I was like, listen, you are doing such a great job overall. That doesn't matter, so working on her to eat more, but also still live the 80-20 ratio that we like. 80% of the time, do all the things, but 20% of the time, let it go and live life. You're not meant to live for your fertility. And so, yeah, literally eating more has made massive change in her chart. And yeah, I think I'll ask her next week if we can share an update.
Yeah. And that's where fertility repletion, I mean, we're talking about depletions, right? We're talking about low hormones. You saw that Dutch way back there. The low fertility repletion method is where we must begin. This is where we begin in the cohort. In fact, we are even beginning before the cohort for you guys on here today, which I'll tell you about in a moment, because this is something where time is your best friend. All right. The cohort is for 8 weeks. We want you starting to replete today. All right. If you are repleting today, if you are actually understanding what it means to truly replete, to eat enough, absorb enough, and create enough fuel to have this robust hormone production, and have that incredible chart. And if you weren't sure how to read that chart, that's what we teach you in the cohort. But to see and drive progress in those charts, this is where we want you to begin today. The cohort doesn't start till July 15th, 14th, 15th, the Monday, that Monday. And so by being on here today, you're going to get access to begin your fertility repletion method. This is really where we capture, and we're not just saying this because we think that this is the place you need to begin. We have seen time and time again that we have to begin it. If you skip this, you're not going to get results. You're not going to get to see and drive beneficial change in your cycles, and it's going to be hard to move forward from there. So don't assume you're past this foundation. That will keep you stuck. No amount of supplements are going to help if this isn't established and used as a foundation of your cohort experience, or you don't even do the cohort, like just your experience going forward, right? And this is not the same as eating healthy. All right. So if you are kind of thinking, I'll be like, well, I'm already healthy here. Welcome to our community. Welcome to everyone else who is doing the same and thinking the same and committing to eating healthy. Wonderful. But welcome to an opportunity to shift that and actually make that healthy eating for you, right? What does your healthy eating look like? It's probably not the version that you are thinking it is and committing so much time and effort to. Okay. Okay, I saw, is that coming up in the, it says it can't be viewed. I think Kaylee just shared a link there. For some reason, I can't view it in the messages.
I think it's just showing that it's a link for Practice Better. So Dana asked a great question about, have we been successful with working with women over 45 to get hormones in line to get pregnant? We have a great testimonial about a client that went through this exact, I don't want to say transformation, but had success. And she was 45 and she gave birth at 46. And so I just put a link in there so you can access that testimonial. Just, you will have to create a free account in Practice Better and enroll in the free fertility library to access that. If you have any issues, email me. My email is in the chat here as well. So that's what that is all about.
Perfect. Here, I'm not going to go through all these, but these are just some lovely, just really beautiful things that cohort members have to say. I also, Kaylee and Alyssa, I'll get to you in a second as well. Great questions. I'm not going to play Haley's story, but Haley did come to us for her second pregnancy and did get her positive. She is now pregnant after our last cohort in April. And so other things, just really the mindset, the community, the support, understanding how to have power in your journey is just so irreplaceable. And so let's talk a little bit about that. Alyssa, if digestion is off, does the repletion? Yeah. So if you're under eating, then under eating, probably the number one reason we see for people having digestive issues in the women that we work with, digestion is not going to start working optimally until you are repleting. So there you go. Our website talks all about the cohort. So if you want more information, yourfertilityyourfuture.com, check that out. This is like the just information page on our website. Also a preview of what this looks like in your program. The curriculum comes to you via our app, super easy to follow along and get in there and begin working. Now, again, we don't start until July 14th, second week of July. All right. So if you are ready to get going on repletion now, then we created, it's really brand new for this cohort going forward because we were seeing so much success with it. Fertility repletion method is going to be included when you commit to starting the cohort with us in July via our VIP list. All right. So when you get on the VIP list, you are going to immediately get access to the fertility repletion method and get going on your own. All right. You're also going to be entered to win a free Dutch test, which is huge. This is over a $550 value. You're going to begin to you're going to get into a private chat with all of us. So you can start asking us questions. You're going to get access to our alternate cohort prep guide, which talks about labs and supplements and how to get going on everything you need so that you are ready to hit the ground running in July. It's just an amazing opportunity to really get going and feel so confident that you're already driving positive change when we open the cohort officially and begin with our first group call in that second week of July. All right. Last thing I'll mention about this VIP list is it's the only place that we offer a discount. So we don't play games with discounts. We don't like run last minute specials. You're not gonna. We're just not. That's not our MO. So this is the only discount. You save $275 when you get on the VIP list. All right. It's the only place it's offered, plus all those other things. So check that out. Did we share that link, Kaylee?
I will share it right now.
Perfect. So that will take you to the VIP program. All right. Again, only place where you can find that stuff. And then getting going on specifically that repletion. We created this fertility repletion method as its own program, even outside of the then depth that we go into that in the cohort. But we created this so you guys can get going right away. Anything I'm missing there?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And just, if you continue to have questions, you get early access to us. We're all in there. We're all answering your questions, helping you make sure that you're prepared, making sure you have the right labs to really hit the ground running. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah. Kaylee, I'm going to answer this one question, then I'm also interested to see what our Kaylee has to say to you. I say this depends. I never go in somebody with Hashimoto's and say like, well, you have Hashimoto's, automatically you have to go gluten and dairy free. I do not do that. Clearly you've been seeing success, especially if depletion is also something that's accompanying your hormone picture, your gut picture, then that might not be the step that we want to take removing. And Kaylee already addressed it here. So she's already on it. So yeah, she's going to be Hashimoto's again, has to be addressed with the gut. You would likely go with Kaylee in your one-on-one breakout in your cohort and address this specific question for you based off of your labs, based off of your progress or lack thereof, or other root causes.
Yeah, it's so individualized. And so we need to look at a lot of different factors that can play a role in Hashimoto's, in having thyroid antibodies. The gut is one of them. Many things that fall under that gut umbrella, gluten intolerance can be one of them, but it's not always the magic answer. Remove gluten, get those antibodies down. There's a lot of other pieces that we need to address usually to get those antibodies in an optimal level. And so you've been able to lower them. That's amazing and so great. What does that number look like? Do we have more space to lower them even more to get you in the most optimal place for TTC? So a lot of different pieces to that puzzle, but that's awesome that you've been working in that area, and you can definitely look into it and get, any missing pieces that you might have in that puzzle in the cohort.
And Melissa,
I was just going to say
go ahead, Carrie.
Kaylee, the type of questions that you're asking, I just think that you would be really, really wowed by the cohort and just have amazing progress. So hope you join us.
Yeah, we can always tell by the type of questions people ask, like how much are they going to get out of it? And when you're asking these type of questions, we're like, oh yeah, they are going to walk away with so much, because you're asking productive questions, right? That's what we talk about this. If you just come to the cohort and you're like, hey, should I do this or that? Like, what else can you give us? This is not a Facebook fertility support forum where everyone and their mother is going to chip in and tell you their opinion on what worked for them. This is always going back to you. We are going to have so much information on your root cause, your story, your clarified picture. You are going to have so much more understanding of your picture because you walk through that exact process, that the questions you ask, you're going to be able to get so much more information out of every single one. And Melissa also commented about Hashimoto's. Yep. So this is wonderful. I always think too, like, what are our other buckets looking like, right? Like, go back to that HPA. Hold on, I'll get to those Q&As in a moment. Going back to this HPA-T GIG axis, right? What are your other buckets looking like? Do we have inflammation in other systems? Do we have to? And oftentimes this is what we see so many times. You don't have to get perfect to get pregnant. All right. With Hashimoto's, I would say it's not about getting your antibodies down to zero. It's about dropping them to a level, whatever that is for you, where along with this whole system support, your body is like, oh, dang, whew, I can breathe a little bit. All right. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. This just happened with, oh, this reminds me of our one-on-one, Carrie.
I know.
AMH, what was it? Oh, I wish I had these. Her AMH when she came to us was like 0.2 or something, 0.02. And anyway, at 0.6, not 0, 0.2, and then 0.6, she got pregnant. Like, guys, that's still very low. All right. That's a very low AMH, but she's pregnant because we worked on all of her other buckets. We didn't just focus on one thing. So anyway, bringing that whole picture. Okay, I'll wrap it up here. I did pull some of your questions from your forms for a quick Q&A. If you have others, keep them coming here. I'm just going to kind of like run through a few of these, but obviously if you're live, would love to address those. So Ali L said, is low estradiol related to low AMH? I have low AMH currently on first IVF cycle and low AFC count. I only have roughly 3 to 4 follicles, possibly 5. I'm assuming I'm in the DOR, diminished ovarian reserve category. But are there any ways to improve my odds with IVF? First of all, I will say, by definition, a low AMH means you're not a good candidate for IVF.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I would. That AMH became like a popular thing to test, was for IVF candidacy.
So I would have loved, and depending, obviously, I hope we don't have to see you, Ali. I hope it's successful. I hope that, you know, IVF is going to work for you, but this is what we see quite often is we will get people after IVF has failed, and we understand that AMH picture, just like we were talking about with that one-on-one client, that, okay, why is AMH low? That's where we move the needle. That's where we see the magic dipping in those other root causes in those buckets. So yeah, low estradiol is related to low AMH because it's depletion. So fertility repletion method, I would start you there. Bonnie S said, would love information on eating enough with PCOS while trying to lose weight. I love this, Bonnie, because we see this all the time. And she asked, how can eating more than 2,000 calories support weight while trying to conceive with a PCOS-like picture or excess body fat? Because often we see, not all the time, but often we see PCOS in a larger body. When we eat more, we see this countless times with our PCOS ladies. You eat more because calories are not equal. Okay. So first of all, that's number one. A Diet Coke with 0 calories doesn't equal water, which is also 0 calories. A 100-calorie snack pack of Oreo chips does not equal a handful of almonds, which is also 100 calories. So we're talking about what are your calories made of. 2, you're eating more that is actually going to get your body in a safe spot to actually lose weight. It sounds counterintuitive, but it happens all the time. When we eat more into the underweight picture and you're absorbing it, you tend to gain a little bit of the weight you need. So it's this really cool spot where you're telling your body, again, safety. With PCOS, we see that oftentimes women are holding on to weight as a protection mechanism. This comes along with other hormonal imbalances, maybe extra endocrine disrupting chemicals. The body's actually trying to keep you safe by holding on to weight. So when we actually tell the body like, oh, whoa, we have enough. We're not eating 800, 1,200 calories anymore. Wait a minute. We can let go of some of this. We don't have to go into protection mode and store body weight. Okay. Because we also think PCOS, we're also thinking cortisol and thyroid and lots of things that help that really make us hold on to weight instead of burn it. And then Krista W had a great question. Cycle length, including any reasons the flow week would be longer than 10 days. Carrie, I didn't know if you had any insight. I mean, heavy cycles, long periods, like, yes, there are a lot that we want to check out with that. What would be your first go-to for that, Carrie?
I mean, like, please go get your iron checked, would be my number one. A full iron panel, including ferritin. I also am thinking infections. So I would love to get a uterine biopsy. But it is by no means normal. So that's like probably like a conception concierge type of package with us to like really, really get a deep dive, walking through all your systems to kind of correct that upstream, because we don't want that. But yeah, I would say that, like I mentioned earlier on, if you're having that longer bleed or longer spotting, your lining is just like not going to get where it needs to be by ovulation because your body's just shedding it. And so we need to figure out where in the body, whether it's signaling or structurally, like whatever it is, why that's happening, because that's not normal.
Yeah.
And get your iron checked,
Great
please.
answer. Great answer. Yes. Iron, B vitamins. I mean, definitely, that's depleting, right? I mean, your body is working so hard there. So repletion would be essential, but also understanding the why of what's going on. So, okay. Anybody else have last minute Q&A questions they want to drop in the box here? I know we're coming up on time. We are at time, but caloric intake. Yeah. So this is all covered in the fertility repletion method, Alyssa. It's all in there as a starting point. And I will say, because it is a starting point, I don't know for you, and nobody can tell you that. When you ask this question right now, like, I want to know how to answer this more specifically for you. I would say it's probably going to be more. But it's probably going to be more than what you're eating. But also, I want to take into account, how you're feeling about it. Obviously, you're finding that a little bit difficult, which is very common with the women that we work with. But if you're oftentimes this is where the data is really powerful. Okay.
Yeah.
So is that what you're thinking, Carrie?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you see in testing, the right testing, it might be a Dutch for you, depending on what you've had. If you see that picture of depletion right here, this is a wake-up call for so many women that we work with. Hold on, this one right here. Remember this guy? This was my runner, right? These are my runners. These are my healthy. These are my, committed to a very healthy lifestyle, have always been in a smaller body. Is that pulling up?
Yeah, no, we
You
see
can
it.
see it. Yep.
Always been in a smaller body. This is my story. Okay. Can I just tell you, this is my story. I've always been in a smaller body. I've always gotten, that's kind of my identity when I was young. People comment on my athletic body and my six pack. And, as a young woman, that is going to, be something that I'm going to try very hard to keep up with. And it was absolutely driving my fertility into a picture like this. Depletion, adrenal, thyroid. My body was like, what are you thinking? You're crazy. Are you seriously trying to get pregnant with this? You're not.
And Olivia, when you started to eat more, how did you feel?
It was scary. It was very scary. Gaining weight is terrifying, especially when you do have that, that personality or you've been, you kind of get that identity, right? You kind of wrap your body type up with your identity. It was terrifying. And then the reason why I kept going with it, even when I was scared, is because I could feel the changes in my body that I didn't even realize I needed to feel. I could see the changes in my labs that I didn't even realize were possible just by focusing on repletion. And my progesterone, which I went to my doctor, mind you guys, my story, a little bit about my story. I noticed I found all of this out. I was fortunate enough to find my sub-fertility picture. I was never dealt with infertility because I found this out over a year before I even met my husband. Okay. I truly think that if I didn't find this out and I met my husband and we started our family pretty quickly, I would have had very major problems and probably, again, you never know, but probably would have been diagnosed with infertility. So when I took this to my doctor, and this was very similar to mine right here, my progesterone was even lower than this. And they told me to go on birth control. That's what they told me. Oh, you want to balance your hormones? Okay, go on birth control. I'm like, but wait a minute. My progesterone is not high enough to get and stay pregnant. And you're telling me to go on birth control, which I've never been on my life. When I saw those values improve by simply removing my ideas of what I thought was healthy for me, that's all I need. That I was just off to the races. So it was a very powerful shift. It was hard. It didn't happen overnight, but yeah, that's what it was for me too, Alyssa. So, Melissa, I didn't retest my Dutch. I tested through other ways, which is what we normally encourage and show people in the cohort: fam charting, proper fam charting.
And like the one that you shared on social the other day of the depletion to repletion. So check that out on her Instagram.
Yeah, just yesterday, I think. A prior client who did previous IVF was unsuccessful. Her fam charts, oh my gosh, amazingly powerful. And she actually reached out and messaged us. She's like, just said how much that meant to her, and to feel that and to see that and to be able to have that knowledge about her body that she is seeing change. Oh my gosh, just so, so cool. So yeah, very cool. Good question. And then Kaylee, can you get enough of the picture with the Dutch complete? So this is where it depends on your story, right? So this is where we have the chat in the VIP. We have the Dutch, we have our ultimate cohort prep guide, which lays out all the difference between the Dutch complete, the Dutch cycle mapping. So you read that for yourself. You have other questions, let us know in the VIP. Usually I recommend a cycle mapping for anybody who's had a prior chemical miscarriage, recurrent pregnancy loss, never had a positive, or failed IVF. Okay. So 100%, if that's you, would recommend a cycle mapping. If you're still in that, 6 months, 8 months of trying to conceive, Dutch complete is going to give us tons of information. And then some people just want that full, they're like, yes, that's me, but I also just want the full picture. Go for it.
There's also ways that we can do like blood serum labs alongside of a Dutch complete to kind of piece to get together as well with your fam chart. So we can talk you through it and find out what the best option is for you if you really wanted to do a complete and not a cycle mapping.
Yeah. And the beautiful part about the cohort is, no labs are standard. This isn't like everyone has to go get these labs or else you can't do this. No, you don't have to do any labs if you don't want. You will learn why we're recommending certain labs for you, and then you can make that decision. All right. This is your journey. We're just helping you to understand how to navigate it in a way that feels good for you. Sweet. Okay. Great questions, everybody. Love it. So if you want to keep these going. That's why we have the VIP chat. That's why we have that set up the way that it is, because you can just take this and just, whoa, like you are off to the races. And it's just going to be such a powerful lead up to cohort starting in the second week of July. So thank you so, so much for coming.
Oh, wait, Olivia, don't forget to mention that this is our last cohort for the year, guys.
Yes,
so we will not be doing it again
Yes.
until 2026.
Thank you, Carrie. We usually do 4. We do these quarterly, but this is our last one. So this is our last one for 2025. That means that, again, 2026 is unfortunately a good ways away. So we don't want you to not be able to benefit from this. And the cool thing is, once you get the information, it's yours forever.
Yeah, this is honestly like the cheapest way to work with us and get personalized support, like one-on-one time with us and our signature program. Like this is it. So that's
such a steal.
This is the
It
last
really is.
number.
And you get one-on-one visits with your MASH provider. So you get the cohort, and we added that only this year in our last cohort was the first time we did this. So you get that personalized application and help navigating all the cohort material and applying it to your unique story. So it's really a marriage made in heaven between that group that's very supportive, all the cohort material, and then your one-on-one provider access. So.
And then after the cohort, for the remainder of the year, you get like, we recommend specifically what's best for you, next steps to continue working with us in various capacities. And you can only get invited to do certain things with us if you've already done a cohort. So it kind of unlocks even more support from us at an even cheaper price. So yeah, I highly recommend it.
Think of this as like a prerequisition to go on to other things, because this clarify, and that is the number one thing that we do here. We cannot get the results that we want for you unless we do this first. All right. So it doesn't serve you to jump in down the road and just, kind of try to put the finishing touches on things that, that you've been working on, unless we do the clarify. So it's just, we've seen it time and time again. So, all right, everybody. Well, very excited I know Melissa, can't wait to see you in the VIP chat. We just love getting to know people in there, and cohorts are kind of our favorite thing. So, all right. Appreciate you all. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you soon. Go check out those things on Instagram too. Carrie's, our live that we just did about her mind-blowing clarify session with a new client. And then what was the other one we talked about? I don't know. You'll see in there.
The charts.
The charts. Oh yeah. So powerful. Okay, everybody. All right. Bye.
See you guys.
Bye.